Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. Today's devotional is taken out of the Book of Nehemiah, chapter 13. And we're going to read that chapter, and I have a couple of notes here I took on it because I think it's a very important chapter in the Book of Nehemiah and what he does and his what he conveys to us and for us to do today in our lives and in our walk with Jesus, Yahusha. I've entitled it Separation, Restoration, and Cleansing. And so we're going to pick it up here in Nehemiah chapter 13, which is the last chapter in the book of Nehemiah. It picks up here, and it's entitled, this part is entitled Separation from the Heathen. On that day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation of God forever, because they met not the children of Israel with bread, with water, but they hired Balaam against them, and he should curse them. Howbeit our God turned the curse into a blessing. Now it came to pass, when they had heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitude. And before this, Eliashib, the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of our God, was allied into Tobiah. And you remember, Tobiah was one of the enemies of Nehemiah and of coming against them when they were rebuilding the walls. And he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime frankincense and the vessels and the tithes of the corn and the new wine and the oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites and to the singers and the porters and of the offerings of the priests. So basically what he's saying here is, number one, separate yourselves from the heathen. Separate yourselves from those that wanted to put a curse on you at one time. And you can go back in Deuteronomy chapter 23 and you could read about that. And it goes into more detail about what the Ammonites, what they did, what the Moabites did. But basically Nehemiah was telling them they need to separate themselves from these people and get closer. Now that they're reading the law and they're doing what it says, here's what he was telling them needed to be done. Okay? And then you have Eliashib, the priest, having an alliance with Tobiah. So you have a high priest in alliance with a sworn enemy, and this sworn enemy is bringing things into the temple, which is desecrating it. And Nehemiah calls that out because he has priests now allied with the enemy. And think about today, in our world that we live in today, because basically these people came from Babylon into Jerusalem to rebuild the walls, and so they were coming from a hostile nation, a nation that they were in captivity in, and Nehemiah is getting them back to basics. He's organizing, he's leading, he's doing all the things that leaders do, and he's making the hard decisions and the tough decisions. And sometimes it's hard to hear the truth and some of the things we have to take out of our lives. We could glean a lot from this chapter in the book of Nehemiah. Verse 6, it says, but in all this time was not I at Jerusalem, for in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, king of Babylon, came I unto the king, and after certain days obtained the leave of the king. And I came to Jerusalem and understood. So basically what he's saying is Nehemiah went back to Babylon. He was the cupbearer to the king, so he went back in service again, and then he hears about this stuff, and he comes back again into Jerusalem. And he says, and understood of the evil that Eliashib did for Tobiah in preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. He's going on about what this priest did with Tobiah. And it grieved me sore, therefore, he says, I cast forth all the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. And then I commanded, and they cleansed the chamber, and thither brought I again the vessels of the house of God, and the meat offering and the frankincense. So basically what Nehemiah did, he took physical action. He cleansed this area that was defiled by Tobiah, and that this priest allowed to happen, and he cleansed it, and he reinstated the chamber back to what it was supposed to, how it was supposed to be set up. So Nehemiah cleaned house, basically. And so think about this in our own lives and what Nehemiah's, what his direction is for us, what he did as a leader. Then he goes into restoration of the Levitical support. So the Levites were to support all the things that went on in the temple, and I perceived that the portions of the Levites had not been given them. So they had laws in place that the Levites were to get certain things and to have certain things. This goes back to, way back, even before King David. For the Levites and the singers that did the work were fled every one to his field. Then contended I with the rulers and said, why is this house of God forsaken? Again, look at Nehemiah, how he steps in. And he sees the problem, and then he begins to fix the problem, not ignore the problem. Why is the house of God forsaken? He's asking these tough questions. And I gathered them together and set them in their place. So he calls a meeting. He gathers them together. He puts them in their place. He lets them know what they were doing wrong. He points out their shortcomings and the things they were doing to defile and break the law. Then brought all Judah the tithe of the corn and the new wine unto the treasuries. And I made treasurers over the treasuries, Shemaiah the priest, Zadok the scribe, and of the Levites, but Padaiah, and next to them was Hanan, the son of Zaccur, the son of Mattaniah, for they were counted faithful. What does he do? He puts faithful and trusted people in places of, positions to ensure that this would not happen again, and that the Levitical support would not be neglected. And so think of the leadership of this man and how we could apply it to our lives and our work and our spiritual life also. And their office was to distribute unto their brethren. And he says in verse 14, remember me, O God, concerning this, and wipe out not my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for the offices thereof. Next he restores the Sabbath. In those days saw I in Judah some treading winepress on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens. So basically people were working on the Sabbath, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them, and in the day wherein they sold the victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre, also therein, which brought fish and all the manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. So men were coming from Tyre, and also selling to the children of Judah in Jerusalem on the Sabbath. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, so again, here's Nehemiah confronting the tough and making the tough decisions. What evil thing is this that ye do and profane the Sabbath day? If you remember, the Sabbath is a day we should all be honoring and celebrating to this day, because it's from the seventh day of creation, and it's for everybody. Okay, but we won't get into that discussion here. Here he's confronting these people. Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. So he's really digging into these guys for doing this. And again, you're going to see him take action. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of the servants set I at the gates, that there should be no burden be brought in on the Sabbath. So he sets guards and people there to make sure that this wouldn't happen again. He takes action. Nehemiah is a man, he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk as well. And so the merchants and the sellers of all kinds of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. So he kicks all these merchants outside the gates. Then I testified against them, he says, and said unto them, Why lodge ye about the wall? If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you. Nehemiah is physically threatening to lay hands on them if they do not listen to what he's saying. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath. Well, sometimes it's necessary to make really tough choices and decisions. And Nehemiah made that one here, up to and including the laying on of hands against these people. And I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, and that they should come and keep the gates, to sanctify the Sabbath day, to sanctify the Sabbath, to set it apart, to put it back where God had commanded it for them to follow. Remember, he rebuilds these walls. They're reestablishing people back into this area, into Jerusalem from Babylon, and he's getting back to basics. He's getting back to Torah. He wants to set the foundation so moving forward they're on the rock. It's like Jesus says, build your foundation on me. I am the rock. Everything else is sinking sand. That's what you should have in mind when you're looking at this and looking forward. And so the next and last thing he does is, so he restores the Sabbath. Then he talks about mixed marriages. In those days also I saw Jews, so that should be the Hebrews, or the Yahudim, basically, that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. And their children spoke half the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language. They could not speak the Hebrew language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons, or for yourselves. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin by these things? Yet among many nations was there no king like him, who was beloved of his God, and God made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, even him did outlandish woman cause to sin. So what he was saying was, you cannot mix with these heathen cultures, because they will bring us down. Their beliefs will pull people away from Torah, from their roots, and this cannot be. This is something that they took very serious, and Nehemiah was to the point of plucking their hair out to get it through to them that they needed to change. Shall we then hearken unto you to do all this great evil, to transgress against our God in marrying strange wives? So it's all about sin and cleansing oneself and getting back, and think of repenting. We do something wrong, we need to bring it before the throne and repent of it and turn and change. And that's what he's telling them to do. And then here again it says, one of the sons of Joiada, the son of Eliashib, the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat. So this high priest that we talked about earlier had somebody in his family that was allied with another enemy of Israel, Sanballat, the Horonite. Therefore I chased him from me. Again, do not fraternize with the enemy. Get away from the enemy. And there are so many enemies of us today in this country that we're living in. We're basically living in Babylon today. The United States is a living, breathing Babylon. And we have to live amongst these people, and at the same time stay true to the Word, and it is not easy, and it's getting harder and harder, and the evil that's in place, the Sanballats and the Tobiahs that are in place in and around every one of us, are seeing to it that they distract us, they come against us, they speak bad about believers, and this is some of the persecutions that we will be going through in the future. So taking Nehemiah chapter 13 very seriously, and understand what he's doing here, what Nehemiah is doing here. He's setting the foundation, and he wants to move forward on a firm foundation. Then he says here, after he says, I chase them from me. Remember them, O my God, because they have defiled the priesthood and the covenant of the priesthood and of the Levites. Remember, you're in covenant with the Most High. Okay? You're in a covenant. It's a contract. He saves you. You repent of your sin. He saves you. And you pledge to follow him, right? Everyone pledged, I'm a follower of Jesus. He says, if you love me, do my commands. Follow my commands. Understand what the commandments are. They're in the Torah. They're throughout the Bible. And basically the New Testament is a commentary on the Old Testament. So it's not something different. It's not something that was done away with. Okay? And again, it ends here. Thus cleansed I them from all the strangers and the appointed wards of the priests and the Levites, every one in his business. Again, the organizational skills of Nehemiah are unbelievable. And for the wood offering at times appointed, and for the first fruits, remember me, O my God, for good. So we see in closing today, separation of the heathen, number one. The priests that were allied with the enemies, he put an end to that. He reinstated the support of the Levites and built that structure that they supported with in the temple. Restoration of the Sabbath. Restoration of the Sabbath. Something we need to do today. Restoration from mixed marriages and the high priest's son affiliated with the enemy. Again, he does away with that, and he sets them on a course of success, a course of living in covenant with the Most High. And so that's what I wanted to convey today in Nehemiah chapter 13. Separation, restoration, and cleansing. We need to do it in our lives and in our spiritual walk with Messiah. Anthony signing off. Thank you for watching. Yah bless everybody. Have a great day and a safe day in those in the path of the storm.